Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today we are continuing our series on monsters in D&D, and we're stepping up the damage and we're stepping up the danger. DMs, pay attention, this is the CR5 monsters. As you come to a close in the final stages of the first tier of play, you've got a party of level 5 characters. The martial characters have gained their extra attack. The spellcasters have gained their 3rd level spells. It is a massive power spike for player characters. But CR5 creatures have also had a power spike, and I've created a top 5 list here of creatures that would definitely challenge the average level 5 party. Just one of these monsters could give a level 5 party pause, especially if they have minions with them or smaller creatures, and their power far supersedes that of the average level 5 character. You would need a highly tuned S tier player character to match the power of one of these creatures. So I recommend use these with caution, but if you really need to challenge your players, this could be a good pick for you. Before we get into the list, though, I'd like to let you know that Relaxed Fantasy Review has memberships for just $1 a month. You can press the join button below this video and get a little badge in your name next to the comments showing that you're a supporter. You would earn my undying gratitude for doing so. But even if you can't, just watching, subscribing, any of these things is a great support to me. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to start off with a bit of a disclaimer. This first creature is not in and of itself a CR5 creature. It is the Hag of the Fetid Gaze from Candlekeep Mysteries. This creature on its own is lower than CR5. The reason that it's on this list is because the Hag of the Fetid Gaze is part of a coven of 3 hags, as is the standard amongst the Fae and the hags. This hag becomes CR5 when it is with its coven, specifically because they gain access to much higher magic that they can share amongst themselves. This is one of those interesting, they are stronger together than they are separate, they are greater than the sum of their parts. The Hag of the Fetid Gaze has an AC of 17, 82 hit points, and a speed of 30 feet. It has the amphibious trait, so it can breathe both underwater and in air. It has the mimicry trait, which means that it can mimic the sound of any creature that it's heard before, making it very tricksy when it comes to luring people. It also can take the illusory appearance action, giving itself a different appearance, very similar to Disguise Self, as well as the invisible passage action, which allows it to become invisible for a turn and move, making it hard to keep track of. It does have a standard claw attack, because these are hags after all. The claws do have a +6 to hit and do 2d8 +4 damage, which is relatively standard. And it is their spellcasting, like I said, that sets them apart from the standard mind control stuff like Charm Person, Dominate Person, and Suggestion, all the way up to the more practical magics, such as Dispel Magic. They can use the slow spell, debuffing potentially the whole party in one shot. They can use the polymorph spell to further empower them in battle in case they need to make themselves stronger. And if all else fails, their strongest spell is Otto's Irresistible Dance, which is a no save debuff, which then takes an action to get rid of, definitely taking the heaviest hitter out of the fight temporarily. The fact that you have an entire coven of these hags, a whole trio of them, means that a level 5 party probably wouldn't survive. This is the sort of thing that if your party's getting too big for their britches and they think, you've got yourself a Gloomstalker and an Oath of Vengeance Paladin and an Eloquence Bard and, a Divination Wizard, all the souped up, highly S tier subclasses, maybe throw a Coven of the Fetid Gaze at them to show them that, hey, just because you're powerful doesn't mean you're unbeatable. And you're still using a CR5 creature, so. But I wouldn't recommend that normally. I would recommend maybe sending one of these creatures at a CR5 party, or perhaps a whole coven of them at a higher level. I'd say level 7 or 8 when their spellcasting is closer to the hags and their subclass features have started to kick in. So yeah, definitely a powerful CR5 monster for sure. On another note of powerful CR5, the Sanguine High Priestess is my next recommendation. You can find this in the book Ghosts of Saltmarsh. This is effectively, they're like monstrous merfolk. They're a little more like shark people. And you can find the regular sanguines in the monster manual, but the High Priestess is one of the top tier of them. With an AC of 14, HP of 71, a 30-foot ground speed, and a 40-foot swim speed. That gives the High Priestess quite a bit of maneuverability. They have several abilities. The Blood Frenzy ability gives them advantage on all melee attacks against a creature that isn't at full health. Effectively, like the shark thing. If you're wounded, they're going to attack more. On the shark note, they have a power called Shark Telepathy, which means that they can command sharks that are close by, which is kind of scary if you're in a water campaign. And they have the Limited Amphibiousness trait, which is another way of saying they can go out of water, but only for a few hours at a time, and then they have to resubmerge themselves. So effectively it's like a long-term holding breath, except it's holding breath from water into air. So they can leave the water. If you want to really take one out, trapping them above water would be a viable aspect. Now they do have your standard bite and claw attack. Both of them have a +5 to hit and do 1d4 + 2 damage. And they have a magical staff, the Toothsome Staff. Sorry. Toothsome Staff. The Toothsome Staff has a +5 to hit and does 2d8 + 2 damage, making it their preferred melee weapon. And it does have a multi-attack as well that incorporates all of these, so, watch out for that. But the real reason they're here is their magic. Once again, spellcasting stands head and shoulders above the rest of their powers. They've got a good amount of buff and offensive magic. They can cast the Bless spell, giving them and their allies a buff. They can cast Guiding Bolt, giving advantage on attacks against a potentially unharmed target. They can even cast Hold Person, Fear, and Banishment. Banishment being one of the best battlefield control spells out there. And, if that wasn't enough, they can even cast Spiritual Weapon, giving them a weaponized bonus action pretty much at will. This mixture of cleric spells along with underwater savagery make Sanguine High Priestesses incredibly potent. So I would say one of them plus a few minions alongside them, great challenge. But not all monsters are as clear cut, and we're going to take a step into Boo's Astral Menagerie from the Spelljammer series and talk about a creature that just made me laugh. It's a scary, powerful creature, but it just made me laugh. The Murder Comet. The Murder Comet is exactly what it sounds like. It's a comet. It is a celestial body that flies at 120 feet. It doesn't even have a ground speed. It just flies 120 feet. And it's just a comet. It's literally a ball with a face on it and a big long tail behind it that flies super fast. It's got an AC of 19, 66 hit points. It has the flyby trait, because of course it does. You can't opportunity attack it when it flies by you. It glows, has the illumination trait, so that's cool. It has the unusual nature trait. It doesn't need to breathe in space, which is nice. And it has the siege monster trait, which means that when it attacks structures, buildings and such, it does double damage. And this thing has a multi-attack, a slam attack where it flies up and just bashes into you. Got a +5 to hit, does 1d8 plus 2d6 plus 2 damage. And it has a fire breath where it can spit fire, a little closer to a fire bolt attack. +5 to hit does 2d10 plus 2 damage. But what I find the most interesting about it is that it's really dangerous to fight up close because of its exploding trait. Yes, this is a living bomb, effectively. When they die, they explode like a fireball, literally forcing a dex save against 8d6 damage, just like Fireball. This is a living, slamming, fire-breathing fireball. And that just makes me laugh. I think that this is a fun creature that if you wanted to confuse the heck out of your characters, I could imagine like this thing doing nothing but screaming the whole time. Like they're just walking along and suddenly there's a comet and they're like, oh, that's pretty. And then they said, what's that? Ah! Like just flying in and slamming into them. It's a funny concept that I could definitely see just being a one-off, harebrained encounter that actually is pretty challenging. So yeah, kudos to the Murder Comet. All right, enough silly stuff. Let's go to the book Princes of the Apocalypse, all about the elemental creatures and monsters, and talk about a roper. Ropers are tentacle creatures, basically sturdy creatures that have grasping tendrils. This one from Princes of the Apocalypse, the CR5 version, is the Molten Magma Roper, basically a fire version of the same thing, with a 20 AC and a 93 pool of hit points. This thing is pretty tough. It's not that fast. It does have a 10-foot speed and a 10-foot climbing speed, so it's not going to be chasing anyone down. This is the sort of thing I could imagine being stationed in the center of a battlefield, supporting like a horde of monsters, while it reaches its tendrils out. It has a false appearance trait as well, so you could mistake it for just a piece of the scenery if it doesn't move. Its grasping tendrils power means that it can reach out at creatures up to 30 feet away from it, giving it a huge reach in the area. It also can spider climb, so yes, you could plop this thing up on top of a ceiling, and it could reach down at the enemies, or I guess at the players. Its multi-attack is reasonably strong. It can grasp with its tendrils with a +7 to hit, doing 1d8 damage, but with an automatic grapple and restrain feature. So it's going to really tie the party down. And it can use an action called Reel, where if it's got a creature that it's grappling, it can use its action to pull it 25 feet, which is a huge amount of movement speed. And of course, if it's within range of a creature, if it's right next to it, it has a bite attack, which is much stronger than the tendrils. +7 to hit, 4d8 plus 4 damage. So this thing is a whole environmental puzzle all on itself, while also doing pretty decent damage and locking your allies down. Really scary kind of creature. Definitely, if I was in a tough cave fight, would plop it on the ceiling and have it like grasping at the players and reeling them up. So even if they manage to break out of the restrained grapple, now they have to fall and deal with that. So, and with a high AC, it's going to be tough to take down. So, good monster here for a high level party. And then finally, we enter into the monster manual for our final creature of this list, the Mesoloth. Mesoloths are fiends, and they are very interesting. Their backstory is kind of interesting, where they were created to be a fiend army outside of the Nine Hells. So the devil lords, the archdevils, could control them, but then they lost control of them, so now they're just this wild fiend army that's not tied to the nine hells. They have an AC of 18, 75 hit points, and a 40-foot speed. They're these insectoid fiends. They have magic resistance, so they will resist. They have advantage on their saving throws against spells. They have magic weapons. Any weapon attack they make is automatically considered magic. They typically carry a trident with them and can use their claws to attack. The trident has +7 to hit and does 1d6 plus 4 damage. Their claws have a +7 to hit and do 2d4 plus 4 damage. So they don't hit super hard, but their multi-attack means they can put several attacks out there. And what's more interesting is that they have a basically for free teleport. They have to use their action to do it, but they can teleport 60 feet as many times as they like. This is like an action version of Misty Step that just pops them wherever they need to go, making them really good at escaping people. And they do have limited spell casting. They can cast the darkness spell, which they can then see through because they're fiends. They also have dispel magic, meaning that if they do happen to fall prey, if magic resistance doesn't save them, they can just dispel it. And at a last resort, they can, once per day, cast Cloud Kill. And since they are immune to poison and acid damage, this is very detrimental to the party. Another cool thing about the Mezzoloth is that they are actually resistant to many types of damage that are common: bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical weapons, and fire and cold damage. So many of the common cantrips and weapon attacks that you'd be seeing at level 5, fire, cold, acid, and poison, and bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, either resistant or immune. So that 75 hit points is going to go a long way with these guys. And they have magic resistance. And they can cast Cloud Kill and Darkness to create areas of effect. They are a tactician's dream trooper. And interestingly, they're actually one of the lower ranking soldiers in this fiend army. There's stronger ones, but for the purposes of CR5, these guys could absolutely be a heck of a challenge. Especially if you threw a couple of them at a mid-level, like 7 or 8 party. This would be an incredible challenge for them to face down. Would take most of your power to take down a few of them. So, yeah. These are all creatures that I think could provide very fascinating combats, as well as, puzzling challenges on the battlefield. That Roper, that Comet, you can't fight them in just straightforward ways. And the rest of them have amazing magic and powerful defenses that really help against parties. So DMs, any of these creatures could be used against a level 5 or higher party, although I caution against using them against level 5 parties, since they may be a little bit too strong. So, yeah, use with caution and have fun unleashing these monsters on your players. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, and keep your eyes peeled for more monster reviews coming down the line soon. Have a good one, my friends.